Welcome back. This is the Resilient Entrepreneur Podcast, and this is Kevin Johnson of Leverage Consulting. Today, if you like the last few podcasts, I think you'll like this one even better. So in the last few, I talked about a few clients, few acquaintances, and what made them super successful. In the last one, I talked about your why. And today, instead, I'm going to talk about why you need to be doing something specifically. But before I talk about that, I'll tell you about, I guess, part of my startup process. And so as part of my startup process with clients is I ask them to give me some kind of update or fill me in on their team meetings and what they look like and how effective they are. And yes, that silence is there on purpose because, interestingly enough, that's sometimes the response that I get. And not that that's a bad thing, but essentially they are kind of hesitating a little bit because essentially more times than not, what I'll hear is, oh yeah, we used to do those, but they were terrible and we quit. Or I've done them, and here's one I probably hear the most, and it is that my or our team meetings have been nothing more than a complaint fest. And maybe you have a different word for that or a different name for your team meetings. But I will tell you hands down, without a doubt, like this is something that is just like a concrete, needs to be done type thing for you to get the most out of your business and out of your investment and out of your team. And there's a lot of other reasons for it other than just ROI reasons. But it is that good and effective team meetings are a good sign of leadership. They're a good sign of management. And I know that a lot of folks have shied away from doing it, and I believe the reason they shy away from it is because of they've hit the obstacle, the wall, it wasn't fun. It was stressful. I will tell you that is not the reason to stop. If anything, it's probably the reason to double down and keep going. Now, it may be that we don't keep going in the same fashion. Maybe we need to pull the plug on the direction and the way we've done it in the past. And maybe now is the time we need to just approach it differently. And in the last podcast, I talked about you having your big why you get out of bed, why you do the things that you do. This hopefully will build on that because this is literally one of the top 5 reasons why many businesses and practices don't grow at the rate that they could or should. And it's just effective meetings. And it's funny, there's tons of books out there that are written about terrible meetings, death by meeting, just how awful many meetings are. But imagine if they weren't. I mean, many of the people that are listening to this, you went to school for years, or you trained in a certain trade for years. You're smart people. You've done amazing things. And I'm super confident all of you can run at least a decent team meeting. And here's the big reasons why. And again, why I said what I did and why we're going to build it into this podcast is, and there are 6 reasons for you to have team meetings. And for these team meetings to happen regularly, without putting them on the side, without rescheduling them, we make them as concrete as time that we make for our clients and patients. So one is our team meetings are there to spell out, draw pictures if need be of expected outcomes. I want to talk about expected outcomes for a moment. Sometimes they'll talk about what I need you to do, and they'll give people tasks. And those tasks are good at times because it's spelling out exactly what we need someone to do. Step 1, step 2, step 3. But the one thing, and this actually came up with a client recently where they asked their team to do something, but I believe the one thing that the team may have missed is the expected outcome. Because we're going to get thrown curveballs throughout the day. We're going to get different things. So let's just say we may give a team member the tasks. Do this, do this, do this. Great. That's actually better than many other businesses out there. They just a lot of other businesses will just tell team members to figure it out, or they'll just say, do your job kind of thing. And it's kind of a sink or swim situation, as opposed to giving them the steps, which is great. But in this scenario, they didn't spell out to the team member. The expected outcome is we have a full schedule. The other things really don't matter unless we have a full schedule. So policy compliance and all the other things. Great. But at the end of the day, if the schedule is full, we won. If it's not full, we didn't win. So expected outcomes is literally, it should be the number one thing on your list for why we're going to have team meetings. The next thing, not necessarily in order, but the number one thing is expected outcomes. The next one is updates. We should be providing updates, whether it's what's happening to our schedule, what we're doing with training, what's going on around the office, why so-and-so got promoted, what we're going to do to fill in for a position while someone is out on maternity leave. Could be any number of reasons. Here's your big why for that. If you don't fill in the blank for them, if you don't tell them the answer, they're going to make up their answer on their own. And I'd say 90% of the time, the answer is wrong. So it's just easier to give them the right answer straight out of the gate, and at least they hear it straight from you. So number 2 is updates. This one seems like a close tie, but it is very different, and it is managing perceptions. So if we're working towards a full schedule, that all sounds great. I'm sure most of you listening to this are going to think, full schedule is what we need to do. You say that to certain team members, and they may think, well, that means more work, and that means more stress for me, and that means I'm going to hate my job now. And they may not see the full picture. They may not fully understand exactly what it is that they're supposed to be doing. Or where you have bigger plans, where as we grow the schedule and we get busier, guess what, guys? I'm going to hire more staff. One of my clients a couple of years ago, they were already a little short-staffed to begin with. And when I started talking about we need to at least double this practice, the first thing most team members, I'd say more than 50% of the staff thought was, we're not going to like working here because it's just going to turn into a mill. It's just going to turn into something where it's just totally stressful. And I would say today they actually have more fun doing what they do. They have close to doubled, and we're looking at doing at least 50% again. But it's not stressful because we've hired more staff, and we're actually looking at hiring again. Number 3 was managing perceptions. Another one is training, and all these things somewhat come hand in hand. Training is making sure that not only do we give expected outcomes and we give the tasks, but we also make sure that we sometimes go through the motions of what it is that we're doing. So for example, if we brought a new patient, a new customer in, well, what does that look like? And how does that really function? How does the first stage of this go with our administrative team? How does the next stage of this go when they've come to visit us? How does the next stage go when they get to meet our clinical team? How does the next stage go? And you can see where I'm going with this. And oftentimes there are a tremendous amount of gaps in their perceptions and what your expected outcome is. And that's really the reason for the training, is to make sure they fully get it. And when I say get it, that's my way of summarizing. And this is the barometer, or the one thing that you and your team should use as to whether an individual or the team members get it, is when you take one task or one responsibility and you answer these 3 questions. Can they do it accurately? Can they do it efficiently? And can they do it unsupervised? And I could talk about that in a completely different podcast if you want, so let me know. But that is why we do training. And then that plays right into the next one, number 5, which is teamwork. Sometimes when we talk about concepts, and this again was another interesting thing that came up, we talked about changing the schedule in one of my clients' practices. And when we talked about changing the schedule, the team said, oh, well, this is only front desk or administrative team member responsibilities. Well, I don't know about you, but anytime I've seen a schedule put together, guess what? The clinical team actually has to run it and execute it. So I would think that this is super important to both parties, and we really shouldn't delineate an administrative team and a clinical team. But the reality of it is a team effort, because even the administrative team doesn't know what to do with some of these appointments at times unless the clinical team tells them. So it's a big communication thing. Communication is a massive component of teamwork. And then the last thing is motivation. And sometimes that motivation has to do with teamwork. So it's motivating them and letting them know their big why of why we're doing all these things. Well, if we do all these things, maybe we'll have less stress throughout our day. Maybe we'll have more fun throughout our day. Maybe we'll fill our schedule. I don't know about you guys, but most times when the day is full, the day seems to go faster. So wouldn't we want our days to go faster? Another motivation may be something that's completely non-work related. Maybe we all get in the van and we all go to Topgolf and just have a fun day. We get to learn who each one of our team members are. We've learned who's the competitive one. We learn who is super talented and we didn't even know about it. There can be numbers of ways to do this. The breakout rooms, there's thousands of ways to do this. But some of it is motivation for them to understand why we're doing what we're doing. But sometimes motivation is just that. It's just motivation to make sure that we are having fun at work. We're motivated team members, because when we are presented with a new challenge, or you present them with a new challenge, it's really not that big of a deal, because they understand it's no problem. We have a team here. We're going to figure it out. We'll get through it. So as I said at the beginning of this podcast, not having team meetings in my book is not an option. It's something we have to do. It's something, if you want to propel your business, effective team meetings are huge. I've said this for 15 years at least, that the quantity and the quality of your team meetings are going to be a direct correlation to the success of your practice. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this one. I suspect this podcast has made you reflect a little bit as to the frequency and the effectiveness of your team meetings and what you might be able to do to improve upon it. With that said, and as always, if you have ideas or concepts that you'd love for me to talk about in these podcasts, if you'd like to talk one-on-one, let me know. You can drop me a message. You can give me a call, either one. And with that said, stay tuned, because I have another really great one coming up next.